First Power 4 hire that we're going to talk about this offseason. And of course, it's going to be Bill Belichick. Because why not? In year 2025, Bill Belichick is your head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Wow. When I saw that, there was strong, motion for that, right? On Twitter, on, message boards, handles, big names. Like, we're just like, yeah, this is a thing that can happen. And Bill Belichick himself was talking about it. Like, yeah, this can happen. I would be excited about it. And here he is making $10 million a year. All right, to go coach North Carolina, a program that and I was pretty harsh on Mike Brown. All right, when he was on his way out the door, I was very harsh. I was one of the people that was like, you have this team that you built with this much talent, and you were underperforming. The thing is that he built that team, right? Like, it was very talented, and it was more talent. Like, some of these teams that he had built here in North Carolina are more talented than anything that I've seen at North Carolina in my lifetime. But again, he underperformed relative to expectations that I had for him in those seasons. Bill Belichick is going to have very high expectations. All right. You have great geography. You're in a conference that's on a downward trend that you can definitely compete in. Okay. You already have lots of talent on this team. You have the benefit of mega connections and hiring a nice coaching staff. You are the quote unquote greatest NFL coach potentially of all time, according to some people, right? But I also look at this, I'm like, he's also 72. You hired Mac Brown. You fired Mac Brown basically because he wasn't performing up to expectations and he was old. He was slowing down. And then you hire this guy who's 72 years old to come in here. And it's like, what? It's obviously can't be a long-term play. He's not going to coach till he's 80. There's no way.
That's the intriguing part is I'm not going to doubt that he still has the energy and the ability to succeed at 72.
Agreed.
He turned 73 in April. That's not what this is about. Saban was 72 when he retired, and we all agree he still had it in him to be a damn good coach in college football at the highest level. It's more about like what's next. Okay, great. It hits for a couple years. Like, is Steve Belichick gonna take over? Like, I don't know. That's the confusing part. And obviously, if you're an athletic director, right, you're just trying to keep your job and you're trying to get butts in seats and keep donors. And obviously, if it hits and Belichick does a great job there and exceeds expectations, like it's going to be a good hire. That's not the problem. It's just like the what next kind of aspect there. It's super bizarre. Yeah, like you said, they fired Brown, before the season basically, and they let him coach his last season. Obviously, it was a loss there at North Carolina State, which is not a good thing. I mean, how many times did they lose to the Wolfpack there? It was 6-6 that's past season. Could have been worse, could have been better, but all around, like you said, underperforming. And they had a ton of talent. You walked in, you had Sam Howell and Drake May for how many years, and just underperformed, like gifted, not gifted. That's the wrong word because he went out and recruited those guys and all that stuff. But going out and having that kind of talent at the quarterback position for 5-6 years, but what it was a long time.
How about the linebackers you had? How about some of those DBs that you recruited that went other places and succeeded? How about some of those defensive linemen that you recruited that just insanely underperformed? On the offensive line, you also had underperformers. The only position that you can argue that overperformed at North Carolina, there's three of them, right? It is quarterback, it is running back, and it is wide receiver, right? Everything else, a absolute total flop in terms of player development.
Yeah, but the problem is too, like you go with Bill Belichick, and yes, he is the greatest coach of all time, probably in the NFL. I'll get that, but you saw it really faltered at the end of New England, and obviously a lot had to do with Tom Brady leaving. And if you lose quarterback, like in the NFL, it's really hard, right, to rebound. So I'm not going to blame him too much for that, but he struggled.
Roster management.
He struggled in roster management, roster construction. Talent evaluation, which are more important at the college level than it is in the NFL. Obviously, he was like the GM type guy at the end there, and he struggled. Now, he's bringing in Lombardi. He's bringing in other guys from the NFL to help him with that. But they are two massive parts of the job.
Yeah, it's not that – sorry. You said that you think talent evaluation is more important in college than the NFL. I don't necessarily believe that. What I do agree with you, though, is that it's harder in college, talent evaluation. It's
Yeah.
harder.
And you also like great. You hit on a guy like there's no guarantee right now he's going to be on your roster at the end of the season. So like
There's no
and
contracts. No.
yeah, and now I have no doubt he will be able to attract coaching staff and honestly land talented players. But
And he
by
has
the way,
already.
didn't Mac Brown do the same? Did it turn into wins? And again, we're kind of pooping on this, but I want to like get this into a realistic expectations here. There were names that emerged as serious contenders in this coaching search: Steve Wilkes, John Summerall, Glenn Schumann, Jeff Monken, Arthur Smith. Right, like not all of them were realistic options. Like I think Arthur Smith went back, and I don't know how Steve Wilkes really fit into to UNC there
I
in
mean,
this
it's
timeline here.
Charlotte. Yeah, it's Carolinas, I
I mean,
guess.
like, was he like in that? But John Summerall, are you kidding me? The fact that they did not walk away with John Summerall to me is honestly, and it's not fair to Bill Belichick, but I am dinging their grade for that because I think
Or
they
Glenn
could have done,
Schumann.
or Glenn Schumann, or Monken would have been
But
a home
more
run.
so, yeah, more so. Yeah, I think any of those three guys are so good, and we're giving them a wonderful grade. A
But
wonderful
by the
grade.
way, too, Mac Brown, like he made it to the ACC championship game, didn't he? So like he was also in an era at the ACC that was probably the worst it's ever been. And I think
Yeah.
with Miami doing its thing, with Clemson doing its thing, you got some other programs playing well, in SMU obviously pulling up to the party. It's it's going to be more competitive. And North Carolina, all of a sudden, you can't just talent your way to a couple wins here and there, like you kind of did. So you have to bring it. No, I'm not saying Bill Belichick. I mean, he's known for the process. Him and Saban, right? But I just, and I hate to sound as a skeptic. I think it'll be different than Mac Brown. I just am not sure for sure because like yeah, it's super interesting. But by the way,
Yeah.
like I love it. And like they're opening with TCU and like he'll get a ton of publicity and UNC will get a ton of publicity and they will sell tickets for sure. And the AD and the boosters of the higher ups of the UNC will be extremely happy, I think, with this hire. It's just how many wins and honestly championship appearances or championships playoff spots will it amount to?
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that. Right? I don't know the answer to that. So, I mean, Bubba Cunningham, you're the AD at North Carolina, right? Is I'll say 1 for 2 on coaching hires because I do think the Mac Brown one overall was successful because you proved that you could get talent in the building.
Oh, and
All right.
Fedora was terrible at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Three
Yeah.
and nine, 2-9, like it was
Yeah. That's
bad.
why I'm saying 1 for 2. I think Larry Fedora was a miss.
It just
That's what
it
I'm
just
saying.
fizzed out really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Larry Fedora was a miss. I think Mac Brown was a good hire in the terms of like it proved that you could recruit talent,
Yeah,
like that you could get talent in the building. All right. Another thing is, it's like North Carolina, I get where they're coming at. They're like, okay, well, we can prove that we can get talent in the building. We need someone that can manage this talent. What about the greatest coach of all time at the NFL level? So I see where they're coming at. Like I just still have a lot of, I just have a lot of questions. And it's going to be a very different adjustment. It's going to be a 365-day year job, which, believe me, Belichick like is
he
obsessed with football,
he
right? Like
knows what he's getting into.
he's not gonna get bored. All right, probably. I mean, we'll see, but I just I'm with you, man. Like the fact that they could have walked away with John Summerall or Jeff Monken or like you said, Glenn Schumann, who's been in head coaching circles the last 2 cycles and just still hasn't gotten a look after everyone saw what Dan Lanning did. It's like, okay, what
and
are we
and Kirby
doing?
Smart before him, and like there's a
Yeah,
trend of the defensive coordinators from that tree.
Glenn Schumann was getting looks at Texas A&M, arguably a top 8 program in college football. And it's like,
Yeah,
what are we doing? What are we doing?
yeah, it's super intriguing, and obviously, yeah, I just the NFL or college football is more like the NFL now than ever. You could sell me on that argument for sure. And the transition we've seen coaches come down or come back from the NFL level and struggle. Chip Kelly, but potentially and some other guys. But like I'm in the camp that Bill Belichick for a while, just had the, you know, free pass. It's like, oh yeah, whatever he says, like benefit of the doubt, yeah, it's gonna work for Bill Belichick. But he kind of faded it, as we saw when Brady split and they struggled a little bit. And also, it's a totally new territory here in college football. Let's talk about his contract here. So it's a $10 million annual contract, right? So it's a big one. It's so obviously,
That's
this
huge.
is a
That
program
is
that's investing
huge.
into him, and I'm sure they had to convince Bill Belichick, like, they weren't gonna just. This is not for show and pone. This is not about Bill Belichick trying to leverage UNC into getting back to the NFL. This is a mutual big time investment in college football. So if you're a UNC fan, like, that part to me, and I think I talked about this when it first happened, like, that to me is exciting. To me, that's the story more than Bill Belichick is. Oh, UNC, who has a lot of power and donations and potential prowess as it can flex their muscles and all of a sudden be a football school if they want to. You're starting to see them focus. And honestly, like, we're not college basketball podcast here, but the basketball program is not doing well, right, at all. And obviously, it will always be. I'm not gonna say will always. It's obviously, it's a big, Tar Heel Nation and all that. Like, obviously a huge deal, in college basketball, and they love their
And
basketball
baseball.
there.
They're
Yep. And yeah, like, there's a ton of non-revenue sports too that they care a ton about, but you're seeing them really put investment in the football program with this contract. A lot was made about the buyout and all that and not signing for a while, but that's kind of all typical. The buyout was a little bit interesting, but I think part of that's like maybe a little bit show of good faith, between the two parties. Yeah, so it's a $30 million guaranteed, right? The first 3 are guaranteed, and then you got a couple more after that. $10 million annually for an assistant coach salary pool, 5.3 for support staff, and then 1 million for the strength and conditioning, right? So you add up all those, right? And just, in those, like, you've got about 25 million in annual investments in football, and that's before the revenue sharing and the NIL, which could bring that number up to 40 million. And it's a big deal. First of all, it's a big number, especially in the ACC too, where you don't have this massive, TV network media rights deal that you can kind of just, pawn from. But you don't have a ton of programs that have the ability to do that in the ACC, and UNC puts himself in a spot to really compete there in that conference.
10 million. Nick Saban didn't start making 10 million. Again, greatest college football coach of all time. Didn't make $10 million base annually until 2022. His
It's a
second to
balloon.
last season.
It's a bubble right now in coaching salaries. Like, is it going to pop when you see these schools having to start making tough decisions and tough conversations with
Well,
this
revenue
revenue sharing?
sharing
Yep.
with players, like, yeah, what are they going to do? So,
And if you're a coach too, like, or if you're an AD, do you negotiate with your coach and, like, hey, dude, like, take a couple million off, and so we can put that into revenue sharing, because it's there's just there's a pot. It's not like unlimited. Like, yeah, certain programs have these, honestly endless pockets, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that, I think, at 99% of these programs. So it's tough. It's tough. Well, let's get in the staff here real quick. So there's going to be a lot of NFL influence. There's going to be a lot of familiar last names as well. So the offensive coordinator is going to be Freddie Kitchens. He was, I believe, the interim head coach, right, for the Fenway Bowl, which they did lose to UConn, but again, they didn't have a ton of guys playing that. Obviously, he's had success in the NFL, then worked in college. He worked went to Alabama as well, and played under. I don't think it was it Saban? I forget, to be honest. I think it was before that. But regardless, so there's a lot of crossover there, and obviously Bill Belichick played him when he was at Cleveland and all that stuff, so he's familiar with him there in the NFL. The quarterback's coach is going to be Matt Lombardi. That's going to be the son of the GM, Michael Lombardi. He was with the offensive analyst at Oregon, helping them do their thing. He was also in the NFL with the Dolphins and the Panthers, as well as the Raiders. A lot of offensive familiarity there with all his work as a head coach, or as a coach, excuse me. The running back is going to be Natrone Means. He was a running back for UNC and also in the NFL. He's been on Mac Brown's staff the past couple seasons as an offensive analyst. Coached running backs at Winston-Salem prior, obviously, to help develop Marion Hampton into a monster of a running back that they've had for a couple years now. The O-line is going to be Will Friend, was the OC at Western Kentucky this past season. He played with Freddie Kitchens at Alabama. And I'll say it again, like every video, we talk about these coaching staffs. The connection between OC and O-line coach is so, so important. Friend also coached O-line at Tennessee, Auburn, Mississippi State. So obviously has that, you know, big name SEC pedigree, obviously familiar with, a tough ship and obviously competitive recruiting battles and all that kind of good stuff that you're going to need now that you're kind of putting yourself in these rooms with these big boys recruits. Offensive wide receiver coach is going to be Garrett McGee. He was at Louisville the past 2 seasons, Purdue before that, obviously with Jeff Brom, right, when he transitioned from Purdue to Louisville. He's coached all of the SEC, the Big Ten, G5. He's also the head football coach at UAB, which I love. So you've got Freddie Kitchen, who has head coaching experience. You've got Garrett McGee, who has college head coaching experience. So I love that to help Bill Belichick potentially and obviously navigating all of that. And by the way, McGee has developed some really good wide receivers at Louisville these past couple seasons and at Purdue as well. I think he was Charlie Jones, right? At Purdue, you had your guy last year, the Georgia Southern transfer was blanking my name.
Jamari Thrash.
Jamari Thrash, thank you. And then obviously Ja'Cory Brooks and others here, for Louisville this past season. So obviously a pretty solid coach there. Defense side of the ball, a couple Belichicks, right? So you got Steve Belichick, obviously was the Washington Huskies, defensive coordinator this past season. Who say what you want about him, and I
He was
was not.
fine.
I thought he was fine. I think they're getting a better one there, and we'll talk about Washington, when we do this offseason, but they did improve significantly. And part of that, I think, was offensive play style for sure, and also their just schedule. Washington played a ton of good quarterbacks in the Pac-12. You played significantly less good quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Regardless, though, Belichick has been with New England for like 10 some years. He's worked all over the defense. He knows that Bill Belichick wants to run. So obviously, there's no surprise there that he was coming over. The D-line coach is going to be Bob Diaco. He was a DC at Cincinnati, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Louisiana Tech, Purdue. He helped Notre Dame go to that national title game down in Miami in 2012. The cornerbacks coach is Armand Hawkins. He's obviously familiar with Steve Belichick coming over from Washington, only 30 years old. So he's kind of one of the younger guys on staff, which is fun to see. And then Brian Belichick is also Bill's son. He coached the Patriots safeties for 5 years. He'll be doing that safeties work as well with the Tar Heels there. And then the special teams coordinator, special teams assistant is going to be Mike Prefer. He coached with Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland. So obviously Bill Belichick's familiar with him as he coached against him for many years in the NFL. His father, by the way, too, Prefer's father, Chuck, coached at North Carolina, right back in the late 70s, early 80s as a DB and D-line coach. So that's kind of fun, have that full circle. And I'm sure he's got memories as a Tar Heel, his dad did. So, and obviously the personnel staff, I talked about Marco Lombardi, the GM. You've got some player personnel guys, some player personnel staff. Strength and conditioning coach is going to be Moses Cabrera. He was the strength coach, right, for Belichick, for a long, long time. He was assistant strength coach for about 5 years in the early 2010s, and then he kind of finished off Belichick's tenure as the head strength and conditioning head coach. He has familiarity with the college game. He did serve as Fresno State's assistant strength coach, back in 2004 to 09. As well as with Colorado. So he's got some of the experience, but obviously familiarity with Belichick. Not a ton of surprises here with this staff. It seems, pretty
No.
Belichicky. Obviously you've got Lombardi, you've got Kitchens, you've got the Belichick. So no surprises there, obviously.
Yeah. This is what you knew you were getting, right? When you hired Bill Belichick. Like, this is exactly like if you were to say, all right, yeah, he's hiring a GM, I would have said, yeah, okay, he's hiring Michael Lombardi. Okay, I would have said offensive coordinator, maybe wouldn't have guessed necessarily Freddie Kitchens, but
no surprise though.
No surprise though. Belichick's having him on, yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that Michael Lombardi's kid was like a quarterbacks guy, but no surprise, right? Literally no surprise. All right, so expectations for North Carolina. Like, compete for an ACC championship. Legitimately compete for an ACC championship. And I know people are looking at it like this, be like, well, when's the last time, they've only been ranked in the AP top 10 a handful of times in the last couple of years. It's yeah, that means they can compete. All right, they have geographical advantage. They have money. They have, I guess what you would call a coaching staff that they're paying $10 million for. well, I should say they're paying $10 million to the head coach, which is one of the highest contracts in college football. It's almost as high as Kirby Smart. So let's understand what the expectations are for North Carolina. When you pay your coach $10 million, okay, the expectations, you're getting a Kirby Smart, a Nick Saban, a fill in the blank here, a Ryan Day.
It's top 10. That's top 10 among salaries and head coaches.
You are paying a crap ton of money for that. Is he making more than Dabo? He might be making more than Dabo. So then, yeah, the expectation is to beat Dabo if you are making that much money. And watch out, Dabo is using the transfer portal now. So good friggin' luck, Bill Belichick. So I'm giving this a B minus, and and I thought about it too, and I'm like, yeah, obviously guys like John Summerall, I'd be more excited about, but if they're looking to win right now, like within these next couple of years, say Bill Belichick coaches there for 5 years, I think the expectation for Tar Heels fans would be to win a conference championship. If I was a Tar Heel fan, if I'm going to pay that much money, if the boosters are going to write those checks for Bill Belichick, that is the expectation, I'm assuming. And I don't know that he's going to do that. So I'm giving this a B minus.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think there's a lot of volatility here. I think more often than not, I see it being a little bit below expectations. I agree with you there on the expectations, without a doubt. You're paying a guy, you are second in your conference. So Dabo's making a little north of 11. Cristobal is little bit, it's like 7.8, right there. And then actually Norvell is making 10 million.
But only because Nick Saban retired. Remember, he got re-upped.
And with the
during that whole shenanigans with
that,
Jimmy Sexton, working his magic, getting guys bumps.
Just wild. And obviously that was from the previous year, so who knows what the actual numbers are in 2025. But yeah, the reality is, like, compete at a top 10 level, and if you're paying a guy that much, like, it's different in the 4-team playoff. With the 12-team playoff, with the rules, it's functioning. And honestly, with this proposed 14-team playoff too, like, there's no, to me, it would be a disappointment if UNC did not at least have like serious contending for playoffs in ACC title games. Obviously, I do think there's a need for talent re-up. I don't think it'll be in year one, right? But we'll see what happens there. And lastly, too, like you said with Summerall, I would have loved Summerall and Monk and other guys there, Schumann. But I also think too, like, Bill Belichick's weight, like, just like his name alone, right? I think it gets you a little bit more than what Summerall would have gotten you, and now I think Summerall's a better football coach. If you want to make these big time investments into your program, and I'm talking about the higher ups, right? Belichick, I think, is a guy that could sling some weight, similarly to how Saban did when he first got to Alabama, and really kind of kickstarted what he did with those boosters and some of the higher ups there and all that stuff, with Battle, the AD, and obviously moving into Burn as well. But yeah, I think it's gonna be super entertaining. I'm excited. I think it makes college football more exciting. It makes our job more fun covering UNC, without a doubt. And I'm sure UNC fans, you let us know, like, what you're thinking. Is this something that you were expecting and you're surprised? You worried about? Is it going to be really bad if it's really good? All that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's obviously a big name. Bill Belichick is going to be in college football, and Saban is not, which is wild.